Hello, it's Peter Merrick, and I want to give you a final thought that our greatest failures, or what we think are our greatest failures, can be and should be our greatest teachers. Before I continue on that thought, what I'd like to do is ask a favor. If we're not currently connected on LinkedIn, please invite me to be a contact. Please press like, share a comment, and share the video if you see any value in what I share. I want to share with you a story which for me was devastating when it happened. However, it was one of the best experiences many years later. And one of the things that I've learned is what we think are failures can be our greatest teachers in life. Because what I'm about to share with you, it only happened once. Because the lesson was so powerful, I never want to relive it. So let me just share with you, back in the 90s, I used to run these really great seminars. I used to run the downtown core of all the Toastmasters. And I wanted to get something called a Distinguished Toastmaster, which was the highest level of Toastmasters. And to do that, I had to go and run seminars. So I ended up getting 22 information technology associations that feed into my seminars, and they were building up. And then I had this brilliant idea, which I thought was brilliant, and I want to share something with you. Sometimes those ideas should be kept to yourself because you're running a better movie in your head than the actual reality. So let me share with what it was. It was such a brilliant idea. I had a friend, his name was David. He was the #1 spokesperson in Canada. He had everybody on his Rolodex, from the largest papers to the networks and everything. And this was going to become my party where I was going to show the world how great Peter Merrick was. I'm emphasizing how I was going to show, because what happened, I'm teasing you now, wasn't so great. So the day of the event, there's like 500 people showed up. It's busy. It's busy. And I'm, going to the restroom, and I meet a gentleman, and I I sort of think this man looks familiar, and he asked me about this other event because his event is very small. It's with very super successful business owners. He had invested in this business. His name at the time was a household name. And I looked at him, and I told him it was my event, and he introduced himself, and I told him I knew who he was, and he said, "I like what you're doing, kid," because I was back in my late 20s. "Let's go for drinks after your event's over and my event's over." Okay. I'm really excited now because, like, hey, not only do I have like the Toronto Star, the Globe and Mail, and I've got CTV, I've got everybody showing up. This was like, this was the ultimate event. So let me tell you what happened before the event, and I'm not telling you about what the event was about it because I want to build up that anticipation, because it was really not a smart idea. And you're gonna understand this. It was fantastic for marketing, but the execution of it, I should not have been running this event. So there were 500 people in the seats. It was at this club. It was the biggest event they ever had. It was the biggest event I ever had. It's like we had people signing in, and we had sponsors, we had media there, and I was going to be the moderator of a group. And you know what it was? I was running it for IT professionals. It was called Wired Women, Women in Technology. It was a panel of women, and I was going to be the moderator. Well, now you can understand like how I should have just kept the idea to myself. So what happened was, one of my speakers, or one of the people who was going to be a speaker, she wasn't able to come because unfortunately her mother had discovered that that she had cancer. So I had to find someone else, and I did find someone else, and she was a very nice lady. The problem is, when I was moderating, she started controlling and monopolizing the other 5 people on the panel. So what ends up happening is I end up at first losing control of the panel. And then I start losing control of the audience. Now, let me share with you what happened after that, which was much more devastating than anything. What happened after that is I started losing the audience. I mean, literally losing the audience. The reason people do not want to speak is because they are frightened that people are not going to like what they have to say, so they don't get up in front of a group of people, and because they're worried that people are going to walk out. Well, let me share you with what happened. I saw at first 5, 10 people at a time leave, and then I started seeing 30, 40 people leave at a time. Now, I was completely devastated. However, because when I went into shock, I had a permanent smile on my face. So a really good friend of mine who was in the front row, he said, "You didn't look nervous when this was happening." And I said, "Well, because I was like, my grin of shock would not leave." And the event ended, and I was completely wiped. Well, let me share what happened afterwards. I still had a meeting with this gentleman, Michael, and we went for drinks. And I completely blew it because psychologically at that point, I just had the biggest public disaster ever. The media didn't report it. It was so bad. And it was just a complete disaster. Well, a really good friend of mine came up to me afterwards. I mean, we became friends after this, but he became one of my great mentors, Peter Gorel. And you probably see a number of likes that I make on his videos because he's really a generous, giving person. And I said, I just can't do this again. I'm completely devastated. I can never speak in front of a large group again. And he said, Peter, those people were sitting in the cheap seats. You were in the arena. You were on stage. You were doing something. And lucky for me, those words stuck to me. I was doing something. At least I went up. It's easy to criticize someone for doing something when you're not. Are you the person in the arena doing it? And I thought about it. Lucky for me that I had an event 2 weeks later where I had someone coming from CRA, which is the equivalent of the IRS. And I had not as many people, about 300 people, and I had no choice. I had to go there. I had to moderate a major discussion on who the government considers an independent computer consultant. And what came out of it is I controlled that room. I did not lose control. I've never ever lost control of a room ever again in my life. I analyze the rooms that I make sure that I know exactly the people I'm speaking to. I control the questions. I never ever in the last 22 years since that event happened have ever lost control of a room. And that ended up becoming my greatest lesson because I never want to repeat that feeling again. So what I'm trying to say to you is what we consider a huge, huge, huge failure in our lives can be our greatest teacher. And even though I never got any work, I wasn't able to build anything with that Michael gentleman, his organization has been very, very supportive of my book, The King of Main Street. So I want to thank you for listening to me. So if you think that you have a failure, I'm going to share with you that it's feedback. And the purpose of life is getting up, moving forward, and learning and giving. If you like this video, press like, please share, make a comment, and if we're not LinkedIn friends yet, please invite me. Have a wonderful weekend, and I'm glad that I was able to share that moment. And it's a moment that we all have had. The question is, the difference, are you willing to get up? Have a great evening.